I thought maybe I was a little too low. Maybe Jamie and I were a little too low on Jonathan Taylor when we did our bonus podcast yesterday. Then I saw Heath's tweet. I think it was RB28. Is that right, Heath?
That's what I said.
Yeah, you're high.
Where are you, Jamie?
32.
Woo! My goodness. It just keeps getting lower. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about Jonathan Taylor here as we've had some time to reflect. I have some emails about Jonathan Taylor. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. I'll have a mailbag episode for you. We'll record it on Friday afternoon. We'll air it on Saturday on the podcast feed, but youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. That'll be on Friday afternoon. News and notes today and position preview review. We're going to give you the latest on ADP, so the latest trends at each position, maybe a strategy, some best values, and a sleeper and a breakout and a bust. So if you missed everything or you just want an update, you're just tuning in now, we will help you out and just get you ready for a busy weekend of drafting. But let's just start with who to pick up for the Colts and when to draft or how to rank Jonathan Taylor. Heath, you had him 28th. I didn't realize you'd actually be higher on him than Jamie. And what do you think? Give me your overall thoughts here.
Yeah, round 8 is kind of where I'm thinking. If you want to wait until round 9 or if you just don't want to draft him, I understand that as well. I think there is a risk at this point that Jonathan Taylor just doesn't want to play football this year. There's a risk at this point that he comes back and plays one game and then hurts something else and he's done. So I think you have to draft him with no floor expectations, but there's also the possibility that he sits out 4 games and shows up week 5 and is Jonathan Taylor the rest of the season. And that's probably worth like a 4th round pick or a 3rd round pick maybe. So it's not anything where there's any certainty, but it's just you're trying to weigh the upside with the risk. And right now, after what's happened in the last 24 hours, the risk feels more real.
I did a draft last night, Adam, where he went 82nd overall. This was a PPR draft, two running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex. And I had the first pick, so it was on an end. So when it got past round 7, I said, if he comes back, I'm going to take him. There's no reason to avoid him at this point. And he went on the other end. So,
okay. So, give me the running backs that you're taking ahead of him. The 3 or 4 that are right in front of Jonathan Taylor.
Probably the most glaring for me was when I started to weigh, okay, this guy versus Taylor, that guy versus Taylor. I have both Commanders running backs ahead of Jonathan Taylor.
Wow. And I think that's where I drew the line was that I'm not going to draft the Commanders running backs ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I've got him just ahead, but the guys, it is like a collection of the guys I've called busts. I think Breece Hall and Ken Walker are the 2 guys that I have directly in front of Jonathan Taylor.
So yesterday we did a show on CBS Sports Network. It was a lot of fun. We're going to do another one on Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Please be there. And we did a Defend Your Team segment here where we each looked at our podcast league teams, 14-team PPR. We went head-to-head, and I think it was me versus Heath in the first round. And Heath, you gave yourself the win because you had Jonathan Taylor, and you said pretty soon he's going to be a first-round pick. Right. Can you give me the win? Can I get the win in that league?
Here's the thing I think you don't understand about the way that game worked is that we didn't give ourselves the win. We had to sell to the judges. I sold to the judges. The judges decided. I can't take it away and give you the win now.
Okay, Jamie, can I have the win now? Because you decided that Heath won yesterday.
I told you why Heath won, because you came and started the segment very arrogantly about how great your team was.
It's true.
And so that was the reason I gave Heath the win. I told you I thought your team was better.
Okay, well, fine. I guess I'm being appropriately punished. Let me ask you some Jonathan Taylor questions here. This is a dynasty question from Taco. Dynasty trade. I give Taylor. I get Dobbins. I don't know why I said it like that. Dobbins. I'm a contender, and my running backs are just okay. Mixon, Walker, Charbonnet are the main ones. Do I give up Taylor for Dobbins in Dynasty?
I wrote about this yesterday, and I'm going to write about it some more later in the week when I get a little more time. But I got a trade-off for like a week and a half ago in the Baked Burger Dynasty League of Miles Sanders for Jonathan Taylor after a particular piece of bad news came out. And then I got a message from that guy this morning because Adam added me to the messaging system. Thanks for that. Saying just kind of wanting to re-up those talks. Yeah. And I think if you were in a Dynasty League as a contender, I'm holding. At least right now. If we get to a point where people feel like, or like maybe you're 3-3 and you're not quite as contending as you thought, and then you want to trade him. But I would hate to trade Jonathan Taylor away for somebody I don't value as much when he's the guy who would have won me the league in the second half of the season.
Okay. This is from Kevin.
I just want to go back to that because your team in particular in that league is built to win now.
It is.
So why not take the option of solidifying that chance, knowing that that was your strategy going in?
Because I still have Justin Fields and Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon and Cooper Kupp and Travis Kelce. Like I think I'm still going to be winning early in the year. And I think there's a better chance Taylor might help me win a championship in the second half of the year.
But so can Sanders, though. And there's more safety involved with Sanders.
There's a little bit more safety involved with him, yeah. But I prefer Taylor in Dynasty, so I'm not quite willing to make that deal.
Gotcha.
All right, this is from Kevin, who has Jonathan Taylor, PPR league. He'll be starting Dobbins and Swift in week 1 now. Move Taylor to IR. I can pick up a running back to replace him. My waiver wire has the rest of the Colts backfield, the rest of the Eagles backfield, and Roschon Johnson. Based on listening to your show, I'm inclined to take Roschon Johnson. Who would you guys take? You're looking at the Colts guys, the Eagles guys, other than Swift, and Roschon Johnson.
I mean, Roschon Johnson might be the starter for the Bears at some point this season, so that's a no-brainer for me. But look, that's a great scenario to be in, that you have the option of Roschon Johnson, the option of Kenneth Gainwell or Rashad Penny, and to see what happens with the Colts. So Johnson's the easy one, and then just kind of, you can kind of make some moves. I'd love to know what is on his team that these guys were available still. Like that's got to be a very shallow league.
Well, Johnson one maybe, but not the rest of the Colts backfield and the rest of the Eagles backfield. Now,
I don't know how many drafts we've done, and I've done a few 10-team ones where we've seen the Eagles backfield and Roschon Johnson available.
I guess that's true. So what about Kareem Hunt? Would you guys take? Because I took a gamble. I put a $5 bid on Kareem Hunt instead of Deion Jackson or Evan Hall. I got him. So who would you take if you were just trying to get a Colts running back? And including Kareem Hunt or Fournette or whatever in there.
I think at this point you should be planning on, and Heath kind of spoke to this about his Jonathan Taylor strategy, is who's going to be the guy in week 1? Like I can't imagine Kareem Hunt, if he signs right now, is starting week 1. It feels like Deion Jackson's starting week 1.
I feel like he splits with Hull.
Well, I think whoever is on the roster is splitting. I don't think anybody's walking in. Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, the guys they have, Zach Moss back from his broken arm. I don't think anybody's getting 100% of the touches. So if you feel like if it's a split with Evan Hull, then just go get Evan Hull, because he's probably going to be the one playing on passing downs. Not that that's going to matter.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I mean, Jackson had 2 games with 8 or more catches last year. I don't feel confident that they're going to have a passing downs guy. I think they're just going to mix them in there, both of them, based on what I saw in the preseason. Anyway.
I don't feel confident that Anthony Richardson, with a coach who had a 12% running back target rate last year, is going to throw the ball to the running backs at all.
Right.
I don't feel confident that these guys are going to be any good for fantasy. So that's why I feel like Hunt maybe could be a little better, but obviously it's not a great situation.
Well, I think if you're playing the long game, then Kareem Hunt is the flyer. If you're looking at it, who's on the roster right now, I would probably go Zach Moss, to be honest with you.
Okay. Heath, how about you? Pick your Colts running back.
Yeah. I've got Moss ranked the highest. None of them are going to be ranked inside the first 12 rounds for me. Okay.
And last question here, real quick, Heath, just for you. I got offered Javonte Williams and a 2nd-round rookie pick for Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty. Yeah.
I'd still rather have Taylor.
All right. Big night tonight, draft-a-thon night. Yeah. 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Can I go 6 straight hours without taking a break? That is going to be difficult. No commercials. 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Join us at youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. So why should you join us? We are going to have so much fun. We've got amazing graphics that we've created, games to play. We have an immaculate grid that we have created just for this event, and more. I don't even want to give them away, but there'll be movie talk. There'll be food talk. There'll be a ton of fantasy football talk. We're going to be playing Fantasy Feud against the Front Yard Fantasy crew. That's at 4:40 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be playing Fantasy Jeopardy. We're going to be playing a game with Pete Prisco tonight, Name That Colleague, where we're going to give him clues about Jamie, Nick Costos, and Will Brinson, who will all be on the show, and we'll see if Pete can guess correctly who that clue or that fact belongs to. Nando's going to be on for 2 hours. That's going to be weird and probably involve references to human anatomy that we probably shouldn't be saying. It's just going to be so much fun. And it's going to be really helpful. We'll be doing a mock draft. Now, you as a listener, what do you get out of it? You get a bunch of fantasy advice. You get to be part of the draft because there are going to be 2 audience teams in this draft. So you get to vote on picks. We'll do YouTube polls and you can make the picks with us. If you want us to grade your team, grade one of your drafts, you can donate to St. Jude and we will grade your team on the air. And all of this is obviously more important than fantasy advice, more important than Name That Colleague, more important than human anatomy. It's all about raising as much money as we can for St. Jude. So that's why you should be a part of this draftathon, 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern. We have raised around 100K. We want to just crush that number. We want to keep establishing a new record. And it's really amazing. It all goes to St. Jude. So if you're watching now, if you're watching at all, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today, you can donate right now on this podcast. Hit that donate button and join us for the draftathon at that same URL and just donate throughout the night. All right, news and notes. Other than Taylor being on the PUP list, Jerry Jeudy will not go on short-term IR. I asked this to Jamie yesterday. I'll ask you, Heath. Who would you draft first, Jonathan Taylor or Jerry Jeudy?
Ooh, that's a good question because I think I have both of those guys in round 8. Would probably just depend on roster construction.
Okay. Would you draft Jerry Jeudy or George Pickens, guys?
Pickens.
Yeah, it's Pickens, although I don't really love it.
Okay. Joe Burrow is still not practicing. Is anybody worried about his week 1 availability?
No.
Okay.
A little.
Okay.
Yeah.
DJ Chark is optimistic about playing in week 1. Terrace Marshall returned to practice for the Panthers as well. He missed about 2 weeks with a back injury. Who should the first Panthers wide receiver off the board be?
Thielen.
Yeah, I need to update that. It's Thielen again. I've been bouncing all over the place, and none of them should be taken in the first 10 rounds, but Thielen.
Which receiving core is better by the end of the season? Receivers only. Panthers or Texans?
Ooh. I'm going to say Tech.
I think the Panthers are better right now. So I'm hopeful the Texans play their young guys and those young guys improve, but I'd probably lean Panthers.
I would lean Texans, but it's no strong lean there.
Yeah, if you have Alvin Kamara, if you have Jonathan Taylor, and you have Adam Thielen on your team, if you have Jerry Jeudy, I have a lead with Jerry Jeudy. I might be starting Adam Thielen in week 1. They're facing the Falcons. Falcons have one really good cornerback, a little uncertain other than that. They were 22nd against wide receivers last year. Thielen might not be the worst week 1 play if you need someone, right?
Well, I mean, they upgraded their secondary pretty significantly. So
that's right. They did bring in Jesse Bates
and Okudah, right?
Okudah, yeah, but he got hurt. Did he get hurt? Is he the one that got? Isn't he hurt right now? And they didn't know about his availability.
Not sure,
but there's a reason they got Jeff Okudah for like a 7th round pick. Yeah, he's not going to play week 1. It seems they're optimistic about an early season return for Jeff Okudah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Dalvin Cook returned to practice and says he'll be ready for week 1. There is optimism that Kadarius Toney will be ready for week 1, according to James Palmer of NFL Network. Who should the first Chiefs receiver off the board be?
Sky Moore.
Still Sky Moore.
Who should the second one be?
Tony.
That's the way it's always been, though.
For you, but not for a lot of people. It was Tony.
Who's taking anybody ahead of Tony?
Oh, you mean after the injury?
Those have always been the top 2 is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, fine. I'm just asking. It's okay. You could ask.
No. I mean, well, you made it seem like I'm the only one doing that.
No. I'm sorry. What I meant was before the Tony injury, you were the only one that I knew that had Sky Moore ahead of Tony. But it was always 1-2, Moore or Tony. Moore and Tony. 1-2.
Yes, it wasn't. Take Richie James over Tony at this point.
No. Okay. Let's see. Elsewhere, the Dallas Cowboys waived running back Malik Davis. Would you draft any other Cowboys running back other than Pollard?
Yeah.
You can take a flyer on Deuce Vaughn or Rico Dowdle.
Which one? Am I taking a Deuce or am I going Rico?
Take the Deuce.
I'm going Deuce first, but they're both fine in the same as the range, like same range as the Colts.
All right.
Always
Eagles,
take the Deuce.
Yeah, Eagles acquired Alberto from. You think I should do that before draft-a-thon? All right. Eagles acquired Alberto from Denver. Kansas City acquired defensive tackle Neil Farrell from the Raiders for a 6th-round pick, and Chris Jones is still holding out. So that's going to make that matchup for the Lions certainly in week 1 a lot easier if Chris Jones isn't there. He could be out for a while. Chris Jones, if you don't know, defensive tackle for the Chiefs, just a terrific player.
Whatever the over-under is, take the over.
Yeah.
59.
Whoa.
59.
I don't know about that then. The Patriots waived Bailey Zappi and Ty Montgomery.
Start of the week.
All right, John, what do you think about Wan'Dale Robinson off the PUP list? Does he matter?
Yes.
Mattered Jameson Crowder.
He got cut.
Yeah, I think it matters to Paris Campbell's long-term appeal. It matters to Daniel Jones getting another weapon on the field. It matters to me in a couple leagues where I was hoping to stash him on the PUP list.
Right.
Adam, you're the Giants insider.
Yeah. That's me.
Give us the Giants target share.
Well, I'll just tell you, week 1 is Waller at tight end, Slayton, Hodgins on the outside, Campbell on the inside, and we will see. They will get Jalen Hyatt on the field. I don't know. Maybe he plays.
How many wide receivers see more targets per game than Saquon Barkley?
1 or 0, I would say. I could really see a situation where 4 guys have between 80 and 100 targets. Does that seem?
I think that's almost exactly what I have projected, but it's bad. That's bad news for Darren Waller if that's the case.
I don't know. If he leads the team with 100 targets, you don't think he'd be tight end 5?
I don't know.
He's getting more than 100 targets.
Okay. I hope that's pretty good for a tight end. That's a decent amount. What is that per game? 6?
Almost
6?
Just under 6.
All right. Then we need a little more than that. He needs 110. All right. There were some other defensive notes. This is actually a pretty big one. Cornerback Emmanuel Mosley is off the PUP list for the Lions. Really good player for the 49ers, but coming off a torn ACL. Hopefully he can play week 1 for them. And Buffalo edge rusher Von Miller is going to start the season on the PUP list. They did sign Leonard Floyd, which is great. They just traded Boogie Basham, but the Bills pass rush was worlds better with Von Miller last year. They were one of the better pass rushing teams just in terms of pressure rate with Miller, and they were pretty, I don't know if I want to say bad, but not good at all when Miller tore his ACL. So I can't wait for that week 1 Monday night game. Jets hosting the Bills. There are so many storylines, and it's going to be just so interesting to see how that plays out. We'll take a break. When we come back, position preview review. Position preview review. I knew I'd mess that up after this. Position preview review. Say it 10 times fast or just 3 times fast. All of the ADP that I'm giving is 12-team PPR leagues using both Fantasy Pros and CBS to kind of give a clearer picture here. So let's start with quarterback. Here's what ADP says right now at quarterback. 3 quarterbacks in the top 24 for the first time in 9 seasons. Lamar Jackson in round 3 and possibly Joe Burrow too. Justin Fields and Justin Herbert. This just in round 4, and Trevor Lawrence in round 5. So that is 8 quarterbacks in the first 5 rounds, 3 of them in the top 24. And then Jackson and Burrow in round 3. And then Herbert and Fields in round 4, and then Lawrence in round 5. All right, so the big question is this the year to draft a quarterback early? Jamie.
In the second round and the back end of the second round, yes, that's the earliest you should take a quarterback. I would not take a quarterback in round 1 in a 1 quarterback league, and even in the early portion of round 2. So when you get closer to the swing, the round 2-3 swing, that's when you should start looking at quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jamie. I think if you look at ADP, like especially amongst those guys going in the first 5 rounds, Justin Fields is the only one that I'm going to draft it as ADP. He's the one guy who's not been pushed up and we always see this, like every year we get closer, we get to all these home leagues drafting, the more we see ADP pushed up even more. And that's not that new. The difference is that we're closer on the top 3 guys, but none of us are taking Burrow or Jackson in round 3. I don't think any of us are taking, besides Adam in the podcast league draft, are taking Trevor Lawrence in round 5.
Hey, 14-team league.
You kept saying that, but then it was the first pick of the round. I'm pretty sure that the first pick of round 5 in a 14-team league is still round 5 in a 12-team league.
I knew, obviously, I wasn't going to get Trevor Lawrence 28 picks later.
Right.
So this is what I would say. And actually, I talked about the defend your team segment here. So when it was, I think it was me versus Dave a couple of days ago on a different defend your team segment, you gave Dave the edge against me because I had Watson and he had Justin Herbert. And you just said that there was such a big difference in the quarterback. And I also thought Dave had a better team than me in that particular league. Such a difference at quarterback here. And I just feel when I have one of those top 8 guys, I feel better about my team. Now, with that said, done this long enough to know that the teams that I love the most are not always the most successful, the ones I love the most on draft day. Some of the teams that I hate this team, I really don't like it, could end up being some of my best. So I know that. But I do, guys, feel it is important to have, I really want one of those top 8 guys. So I don't think it's a reach personally, but I understand you do.
Not in that league. No, not in that league. I mean, the question is, and again, this is why when drafts are happening and clearly it's reflected in the ADP, but you have to, like Heath said, it depends on what your build is. When he's talking about Judy versus Taylor, so for you, knowing that you were on the end, you weren't getting Trevor Lawrence, and that's what's going to make you feel better about your team, which I agree with. You want to take the player that's going to, feel like you're going to, give you the best chance to win. You didn't make a bad pick there, even though it may feel like you're just getting him at cost.
How important is it to you, Jamie, to have a top 8 quarterback?
It's important, but I'm not going to reach for it. I mean, I did a salary cap draft yesterday, and my 2 quarterbacks are Tua and Kirk Cousins, and I'm thrilled with that. So I think really where people may get in trouble this season is if you don't have somebody that you feel has upside. Like, I believe Tua has upside. I believe Richardson has upside. I'm still okay with Watson and Prescott. So when you get past those guys, like, does Kirk Cousins going to win me a league? He certainly can, but does he kind of cap out at 22 points again, which is what he's been to the last 3 years? Or does he get to that 25-point mark? So does Geno Smith, just have another good season and he's at 20 points per game? Jared Goff, good season, 20 points per game. So those top 8 guys, and again, Tua and Richardson, I think, in this conversation belong there. But those top 8 guys feel like they're going to be top 8 guys if they stay healthy. Like, you can't see or hear anything coming out of Jacksonville that says Trevor Lawrence is not going to take a huge step forward, that Justin Fields with DJ Moore is going to be better, that, keep going up the ladder. All those guys are just safe and have immense upside. Now, again, I'm probably talking out of both sides of my mouth here. So why won't you take those guys in the first round? Mahomes or Hurts or Allen? Because, again, now there's 8 that feel like they could be good. Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts have 30-point potential. But I think these other guys have 25-plus point potential, and that's why you're getting them a little bit later. You should be getting them a little bit later.
Well, it's also who else is on the board, right? So look at the players that went just after I took Trevor Lawrence, which I think was 57th overall.
And by the way, there was no doubt. I was 3 picks in front of you. I had the 4th pick, you had the 1st, but there was no doubt you're taking Joe Burrow if I pass on.
Right. You took Joe Burrow 4 picks before I took Trevor Lawrence, and absolutely I would have taken Burrow. So who went after that? Rashad White, James Conner, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown, Tyler Lockett, Javonte Williams. And then Tua went like 5 picks after that. So maybe you could say some of them, maybe you like some of them better than Trevor Lawrence. I doubt you like all of them better than Trevor Lawrence. So I don't want to make this about my team, but the point.
But it's also, again, where you were picking and what your team needs were.
Yeah, but the point is, when you have to kind of evaluate quarterback compared to the other positions. If you just don't like the running backs there, then, hey, if you've got this guy that you think could be great, whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a tight end, go for it. But all right, so Heath, what do you do if you don't get a top 8 quarterback?
What I did in the podcast league, I drafted Anthony Richardson and one of Cousins, Geno, Daniel Jones, one of those guys to go with him.
All right, who do you think, Heath, has the best value based on average draft position?
Well, that is actually Anthony Richardson, because he is going in round 10, and I've got him ranked in round 8, and I think one in that draft I actually reached to round 7. So yeah, it's Richardson, because it's so easy to put a floor QB with him, and then you're looking at basically having Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, because you've got their floor and you've got their upside. You might even have more upside, and not spending as much draft capital.
Jamie, who's the best value in ADP?
I agree with Heath. It's not really close, based on where you're getting Richardson for what the upside can be. But, I mean, we've seen this now for the last several weeks and really since the NFL draft. Like, we're higher on Anthony Richardson. So, if you're an anti-Richardson guy, and I know, Adam, you sort of lean that way. I don't think you're fully that way, but you lean that way, that you're going to avoid him, which is why he's being drafted where he's drafted. Plus, I think, again, once you get past those 8 guys, it's upside versus floor, ceiling versus floor. Like, Tua's ceiling is fantastic, but you have the health concerns. Richardson's ceiling is fantastic, but you have the experience and the, concerns about him as a passer. But, Rodgers is going to be good. Cousins is going to be good. Geno's going to be good. These are guys going in a similar range, and it's just a matter of, do they have those same ability to get to that upside? And I don't think they do.
Okay. I think if you're looking just our ADP, I mean, Geno Smith is going, he's like QB 16 or something. Tua
17.
QB 13, I think. Yeah, some really good values. Like Cousins, Aaron Rodgers are going a little earlier.
Don't say all the potential sleeper names.
Oh, I'm sorry. One sleeper, one breakout, one bust. Heath. One sleeper, one breakout, one bust.
My sleeper is Geno Smith. That's why I said that. My breakout's Justin Fields, and my bust is Deshaun Watson.
Jamie, sleeper, breakout, bust.
I'll go a little deeper in sleeper. Not that I don't agree with Heath. I think that's amazing, the value for Geno. But Kenny Pickett, his looks look fantastic. And, you can get him for free on draft day. I'm still going to put Richardson in the breakout category, so I'm going to put him as a breakout. And who'd you say was a bust, Heath?
I said Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I've kept saying for the last several weeks, as the ADP doesn't change, is Patrick Mahomes. I just do not want to draft him in the first round.
And you'd be comfortable drafting Mahomes when?
I took him last night. First draft I've actually taken Mahomes. I had the first overall pick. He was there at 24 and 25, and I took him.
Okay. You should have taken him first overall, just to see if you liked it. All right, running backs. By the way, I haven't said this. I got to compliment Jamie. I love your new setup, your new background. I mean, it's pretty
not that much different than the old background.
Better. I love the footballs with the initials. Like,
you know what those are, right?
I know what those are. Yeah,
My kids.
Yeah, those are your kids' initials. It's terrific. You've got it going on back there.
Thank you.
Running back. What does ADP say? This is maybe the biggest storyline of fantasy drafts. ADP says there are maybe 8 running backs going in the first 2 rounds. There's usually maybe double that, 14 to 15 or something like that. It's really crazy. There might be none going in the back half of the second round unless Josh Jacobs ends up there. But ADP, has Josh Jacobs kind of earlier than that, actually. Taylor is not going to be a second-round pick at this point, obviously. So that he's there in ADP. But it's really crazy how running backs are falling to the third round and beyond now. So with that said, Heath, is this the year to take advantage of the mid-round running backs? And if so, which ones do you like?
Well, I define mid-round. Are you talking round 3 and later?
I would say at the earliest, mid-round would be round 4 to me, maybe round 5, maybe like the round 4 to 7, 4 to 8 range.
Well, I'll just go ahead and answer the question I know you're going to ask next, because like my favorite value is one of those mid-range running backs, and it's Miles Sanders at the end of round 5 as RB22. I think Alexander Madison's going in that same range. I like him quite a bit. So yes, to answer your first question, I do think the mid-round running back conversation has changed because of what you said. There's only 8 running backs going in the first 2 rounds. So there are better running backs falling into the mid-rounds. It is a great time to do that. At the same time, I don't have any problem if you're in one of those leagues, like you draft Christian McCaffrey 2nd or 3rd overall, and one of these guys who would normally be a borderline first-round pick, like Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs, is there at the end of round 2. I'm okay starting running back as well.
Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think if based on what Heath said, it's a little easier to do it that way because you're going to get one of or have a chance at one of Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Chris Olave, and I'll put Calvin Ridley in that group too. So one of those guys, and that makes it a little bit more comforting knowing that you're getting still a borderline top 10 guy, certainly a top 12 guy, and 2 of those running backs. So it's easier to do it when you're doing it in the beginning of the first round. If you're at the back end of the first round and let's say you go Pollard and Jacobs or Pollard and Chubb or one of those combinations, and then you come back to the end of round 3, and now you're looking at, and not that these are bad players, it's just you might be reaching a little bit, but Deebo Samuel and Christian Watson and DJ Moore and guys that are a little bit safer in the 4th round, and that's your number 1 receiver. It's not the most comforting thing, especially in PPR, but you are getting a significant edge at running back. But I agree with Heath. I think those running backs in rounds 4 through 6, obviously I love J.K. Dobbins. That's where he goes. You're looking at still guys like, and I'm going a little bit further here, but like Rachaad White, James Cook, still David Montgomery, because he's going to, have an opportunity to play in a very good offense. Cam Akers, again, guys are going to get a lot of work. This is where Javonte Williams would go. In my opinion, this is where Breece Hall should go. Yeah. So Alvin Kamara, it's a really good group.
Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, for me, Taylor's behind it, but yeah, if you want to take a chance on somebody that if he does hit, clearly it's going to be a league winning type of player. So, these guys are very intriguing. The question I think that a lot of people have to ask themselves is when you are at the back end of round 2 and you did take a wide receiver, so you took Jefferson or Chase, or maybe, it was even a little bit, closer to the middle of the first round, and it's Tyreek Hill or, Cooper Kupp. Do you reach for a running back in round 2? Let's just say it's not Jacobs or Henry. Those guys go and those receivers get pushed down. So now you're staring at Amon-Ra St. Brown or Garrett Wilson or, Devontae Adams. And that the running back pool is going to dry up quickly. Do you reach for a Mixon or Gibbs or Stevenson or Etienne? I would still say no, but I think that's something that people might start to panic about a little bit, knowing that, okay, it's going to get pretty ugly pretty soon if you don't love that Sanders, Dobbins, Connor, group.
Yeah, but I would say that based on what we said about the mid-round running backs, that you should not reach for a running back if you feel like the wide receiver is definitively better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't, but somebody listening to this may say, oh my God, I don't want to trust 27, 28-year-old James Conner. I don't really love Miles Sanders. I don't, Jamie's crazy about Dobbins. That's nuts. So why would I want to trust those guys when I can get who everybody for the majority of the offseason was saying Ramondre Stevenson breakout or Joe Mixon top 7 every year? Why not take those guys when they're available to me, as opposed to, do I wait to see if they fall to me in round 3, which in some cases they may not.
We all pretty much like the hero RB strategy, right? One running back in, say, the first 2 rounds, and not to say that I'm not saying that it's our favorite and that's the only thing we do, but if you go that route, we like hero RB builds typically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the draft I did last night. I went Jefferson, Mahomes, and Olave with my first 3 picks, and then it came back to me at the 4 or 5 turn. Guess which running back I took, along with Christian Watson. So
Dobbins, right?
Dobbins. So I don't love Dobbins as my number 1 running back, but I love the build. So I have 3 of my top 18 wide receivers, including the number 1 overall player. I have the number 1 quarterback. And now my approach is, okay, now I'm just throwing a lot of capital at the running back position. So it's not the greatest group, but there's a lot of upside. So Kamara was my 2nd running back, but then I have Jalen Warren, who I like. I have Zach Charbonnet. I have Tank Bigsby. I don't know. It's a bunch of.
That's not hero RB though, right? I mean, that's.
No, it's more of like a modified hero 0 RB. So it's not the best place to live. But again, it's what's the build? The build in a PPR league for me was it's a 2 receiver flex league. I love my receivers. I love my quarterback. I love one of my running backs, and I'll just sort of piecemeal the rest of it together.
Okay. But hero RB would be a running back in the 1st or 2nd round typically. And then
I think at this point you could say first 3 rounds.
Well, I guess so, right? Because, well, I wouldn't say so necessarily, right? We should talk about that because, right, like the theory is you could say hero RB is the first 3 rounds this year because in the 3rd round you can get the 10th running back off the board, which is typically a 2nd round pick. However, maybe they're just not as good this year. So maybe there's a reason they're 3rd round picks and not 2nd round picks. So I don't know. How do you see?
Okay,
that?
but
what's your, I wanted to get Heath in there. Heath, what's
no?
your?
Well, Heath, here, let's play it out. Heath, you like Tyreek Hill? You go Tyreek Hill round 1. You go Garrett Wilson round 2, and then round 3 you're taking Ramondre Stevenson. I think still top 12 guy for you. So that's your first 3 picks. And then you come back in round 4, and it's another wide receiver. Deebo Samuel's still sitting there. You take Deebo. Round 5, you come back, and TJ Hawkinson fell. Hawkinson's now your tight end. Do you like that build?
I think it's okay. I think I probably avoid this more than usual just because I do like Sanders and Madison so much more than where they're going. And so if I get to round 5 and Hawkinson and Sanders there, I'm taking Sanders over him. But I do like, I don't know if it's really worth it to get into what is the definition of if it's hero RB or not. But I think the idea is like in the first 3 rounds, you can still get a workhorse 300 plus touch running back. At least that's what we're projecting, and anchor that guy in your running back spot and then just find the other one.
Okay. Look, if you could look at ADP from rounds 4 through 8, you should be able to find a bunch of running backs you like. You've heard Miles Sanders and Alexander Madison from Heath. You've heard J.K. Dobbins and J.K. Dobbins from Jamie now, and James Cook and all these other guys. I mean, there are so many that we like in this range. But when we did the running back preview, we spoke a lot about James Conner being part of the strategy. Now, with Colt McCoy getting cut and Kyler starting on PUP, do we still feel that way about Conner?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I don't want to target James Conner, but I'm not afraid to settle for him here.
Okay. All right. So what's the best value at running back, Heath?
I already told you it's Miles Sanders at pick 57.
Jamie, what's the best value at running back?
The best value at running back. For me, it's Jalen Warren.
Okay. And not in the podcast league draft, because that was another one that I reached for, according to Heath.
What are you doing that for?
Well, that's what
you did. I mean, you took him like 40 spots ahead of his ADP.
His ADP is low. I mean, his ADP is influenced by early drafts, right? He's obviously going to, let me see what his ADP is before I.
And I do think like I've got him ranked around 9-10 range. I think Dave and Jamie and I have all settled on we're fine with taking him in round 9, but that's still right around pick 100.
And I took him.
I would assume at pick 85.
Yeah. I hope.
I'm probably a little closer to that though than pick 100.
85th, I took him because again, like when you draft first and you got to wait 2 full rounds, for me, 28 picks, you're not getting them. So get your guy. All right, let's take a break here. Oh no, wait, sorry. 1 sleeper, 1 breakout, 1 bust. Jamie, sleeper, breakout, bust at running back.
Let's go Roshan Johnson as the sleeper. The breakout will be J.K. Dobbins, and the bust will be Breece Hall.
I've got Zach Charbonnet, Alexander Madison, and Najee Harris.
Okay, we will be right back with wide receivers and tight ends on Fantasy Football Today. Position preview review, updating what we said 3-ish weeks ago. Here's what ADP says about wide receivers. A wide receiver is the number 1 overall player in ADP. That's obviously Justin Jefferson. That's the first time since 2016. And about 11 to 12 wide receivers could go in the first 2 rounds. Can't go in the first round. About 11 to 12 in the first 2 rounds. Jalen Waddle might fall to the 3rd round in CBS ADP. But I think very important, about 24 wide receivers are off the board by the 60th pick. And guys like Chris Godwin, Drake London, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, now Jerry Jeudy, the Steelers wide receivers, they're actually all available in most leagues after the 5th round. So round 6 or later. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's weird to feel so optimistic about both running back and wide receiver in the middle rounds. I mean, like, am I just going to be completely wrong about this? But to me, it feels like there are a lot of good players.
Well, but there are not a lot of tight ends that we want to draft. We like the great or late strategy. There's not a lot of tight ends that we want to draft in that range. There's not, for me, a lot of quarterbacks that I generally end up drafting in that range.
Right.
And so it should be a lot of, those are the only 2 positions left. We're not taking defenses and kickers there. Right. And I do think that, like you mentioned some of them, but there's just like running back, it's not going to be the same guys for all of us, because if it was, they wouldn't be outside the top 24 wide receivers. But there is somebody, and there's probably multiple somebodies that we all like a lot more than where they're being drafted, that we can find in that wide receiver 24 to 36 range.
My big question about this position, Jamie, is how important is it to draft a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds?
I think it's very important in PPR. When you're looking at what these guys have the potential to do, and just the type of players that we're talking about here. I mean, think about these these young receivers, third year, second year type of guys, fourth year type of guys. CeeDee Lamb has established himself already. Amon-Ra St. Brown has established himself already, should get better even in his third season. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, which are basically becoming round 2 picks in terms of Olave pushing himself there. Jalen Waddle, third year. These guys are great. So once you get past, I think, the 5 guys that are going to go in the first round, with Diggs being the 5th after Kupp and Hill, that group in round 2, and you still put Devontae Adams there. As much as I'm down on him, I think he still belongs there. A guy that can get you close to 15 plus PPR points. I don't think he gets 19, which is why he's downgraded. But to get 15 points per game or more, it's hard to overlook that, because again, we're seeing these running backs in the questions. They're safer and again, very similar, if not more, upside.
All right, Heath, you feel it's very important to get a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds?
It's more important in full PPR than it is in half PPR for sure. Like I said, if I'm picking early, I don't necessarily feel like I have to do it, because there are 3 or 4 good wide receivers there in round 3 that I'm fine with as my number 1. If I've got a couple of studs or a QB and a stud running back at the start.
Okay.
If you go running back, you got to feel pretty comfortable, especially if you do it at the back end of round 1 with a Deebo Samuel, a Christian Watson, some people will still put DK Metcalf there, as maybe your number 1 receiver.
How important is it to have at least one second-year receiver, not including Garrett Wilson, maybe not even including Chris Olave? Like, you don't really have a ton of control over that, maybe. But starting with Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, Treylon Burks. Am I forgetting someone? Drake London. Thank you. With those 5 guys, how important is it for you to have at least one of them? Or, okay, at least one of them if you didn't get Wilson or Olave.
I wouldn't go out of my way to say I have to have a second-year wide receiver, but it's relatively easy, especially if you're like us, where we like Jahan Dotson. I know, like Dave is very excited about George Pickens. I'm not far behind in my enthusiasm for him, but I don't know if we have them ranked in the same spot. That you can take them maybe a little bit earlier. So if you are sort of, okay, I want to have that type of player, you can be aggressive with it. And Heath alluded to this, I think, on the show that we did on Tuesday on Sports Network, where Jahan Dotson was going versus where he's being drafted now in our drafts. So like you can be aggressive with it. So you can say, okay, if I want to have maybe the best receiver for the Commanders, or the the ability to get somebody like Pickens, who I know Dave says is the best receiver for the Steelers. You can just, okay, I'm gonna not even look at ADP, and I'm just gonna take them because that's the guy I want. But the guys that are going later, if you're just talking second-year receivers that still have, I think, upside, just a little bit capped, Sky Moore, he's a chance to be the best Chiefs receiver, and Treylon Burks, who could, I think, really surprise a lot of people, especially now that he's healthy again.
Heath, at what point do you feel like we run out of starting wide receivers? I draft this guy. All right, I'd really like to put him on my bench. I don't want him to be a starting receiver for me.
Well, how many wide receivers are you allowed to start? Like, if in a 2 wide receiver league, it's actually, there's probably like 30 that I'm okay with. And then if you're talking about guys as your number 3 wide receiver, then it's a little bit messed up, because I have some guys like JSN and Jerry Jeudy who I don't want to start, ranked higher than guys like Cortland Sutton, who I'd be okay starting week 1 with what we know right now. But
right.
it's somewhere around 37 in terms of guys I'm okay starting in a 3 wide receiver league, and it's about 30 guys I'm okay starting in a 2 wide receiver league.
Yeah,
but they're also not going to be drafted in the same order that I would prefer to take them. So that's not necessarily indicative either.
I'm looking at guys that are going around pick 100, and I'm wondering if you feel like, okay, in a pinch, if we really punted at wide receiver, we loaded up everywhere else, sure, they can be starters for me, but I'd rather Brandon Cooks, Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster be bench receivers for me, and just see what's the bye-week replacements.
The only one I disagree with there is Michael Thomas. Like, if I draft him, I'm starting him and just starting him until he's not playing.
Jamie, your thoughts? What about like JSN and Jordan Addison? JSN's different. He's injured. What about Marquise Brown at this point? Jordan Addison?
Actually, JSN practiced yesterday, so I don't know how injured he is.
Okay.
look, I think whenever you're drafting these unproven guys, and I know it's later than the range you're talking about, but I'll throw, Romeo Dobbs, Nico Collins, those type of players into this conversation also, that you should be doing it with the idea of hopefully by week 3 or week 4, wow, I got something here, and like he said, there's a difference between who's going to be in my lineup early in the season versus where I'm drafting them, because like you can draft Juju Smith-Schuster as your third receiver and be fine with it, but wait on Jackson Smith-Njigba. You should be taking Smith-Njigba first, so that type of approach, so there are guys that have safer floors, but the ceiling we'll find out. But usually the guys with the ceiling you should be drafting first.
What about a hero wide receiver build where we take Tyreek Hill or whatever in round 1, or maybe we take Amon-Ra St. Brown early in round 2, and we skip the position for a while, and then let's say we go to round 6, and in round 6 we take Chris Godwin, and then in round 7 we take Brandon Ayuk, or we have some combination of Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, and then you can take Sutton a little bit later if you want. Tyler Lockett's in that range. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown. Are there enough names there where if I get 2 of those, and I have to start all of them, if I get 2 of those, my hero wide receiver build is okay, Heath?
Yep, perfectly fine.
Let me ask you this, because this is an auction draft that we did yesterday, but it's a similar approach. So I'll change the quarterback just because let's just say that was the second round pick. So let's say it's half PPR. Let's say I started with Nick Chubb and I took Josh Allen in round 2. And so the lineup is Allen, Chubb, Pierce, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Evan Ingram, and the 2 flexes, let's say, are Chris Godwin and Tyler Lockett.
It's not my favorite.
I think Evan Ingram was too expensive.
No?
I think Evan Ingram was too expensive.
Evan Ingram was too expensive. I had $11 left and no tight end, so Evan Ingram went for $11.
Well, listen, I mean, that's a better PPR lineup. Half PPR, it's not ideal.
Well, I didn't tell you the whole roster, but I was just trying to, like, I have Rashad White, I have Cam Akers, I have other Brian Robinson. I have a lot of running back capital, but the quarterback is not the quarterback. But I'm just trying to give it from a draft perspective because you wouldn't draft the team this way. But Calvin Ridley being that I know you're going a little bit higher from a hero wide receiver standpoint, so you're taking a guy in the first 2 rounds. But I think when you're talking top 15 wide receivers, that's the type of approach I think you look at. So you go running back, receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end. That type of build. It's a similar type of approach.
I did this in one of our recent drafts, and now I can't remember which one it was. So sorry, that would have been
or one we're playing out.
No, it was a real one, but I can't find it. Cool.
Great. Well, that helps. Who's the best value at wide receiver, Heath?
I'm going to say Jahan Dotson, just because when I tweeted out the thing that Jamie referenced that I said on CBS Sports Network, and I immediately got a bunch of responses. I just got him at 80 last night. I just got him at 85 last night. And you look at our ADP, he's still at 86. So we are comfortable taking him in round 5. He's gone in round 5 in 2 of our drafts. He shows an ADP in the round 7, round 8 range. I wouldn't feel comfortable, even if I was in a league without any analysts, letting him fall past round 6 at this point. But I still think that's a really good value.
Okay. Looking at NFC in the last week, NFC ADP, Jahan Dotson is wide receiver 33. He's going after Pickens, after Lockett, and just before Pittman and Evans.
I'm in a father-son league set up by Scott Fish, and I've been trying not to influence my son's picks. And I was really angry at him last night because he took George Pickens over Jahan Dotson. And you know exactly why it was, because he's not paying attention to a lot of stuff. He sees highlight reel catches on TikTok or Twitter or wherever, and that's the guy he wants to draft.
I think, I was going to say he was probably looking at Dave's rankings, because before McLaurin got hurt, I know Dave had Pickens over Dotson.
Jamie, who's the best value at wide receiver?
I keep going back to Zay Flowers, just with the potential of being the number 1 guy in what I'm expecting to be a very explosive passing game, or at least the more explosive passing game than we've seen for the Ravens in a long time, and certainly in the Lamar Jackson era. So, yeah, to get him, I mean, you could make the same case for Rashad Bateman. He may be the number one guy there, So those two guys will go relatively late. Flowers not as late as Bateman goes, but they're just great values.
All right, sleeper breakout bust, Heath.
Yes, I will go with Gabe Davis is pick 101 right now in CBS ADP, so he's my sleeper. Garrett Wilson, like we should not just gloss over him too much. We talked about him for 4 months, but then the last month we've like everybody knows he could be a top 5 wide receiver this year. And then George Pickens is my bust. He is going higher than Jahan Dotson in CBS ADP, and I think he's one of the biggest risers in the last week as well.
Jamie, sleeper breakout bust.
I will go with sleeper of, let's say, Nico Collins still. Breakout will be Christian Watson, and bust will be Deebo Samuel.
Okay, again, Deebo back-to-back bust seasons. This is what ADP says about tight end. Travis Kelce in round 1, Mark Andrews in round 3. And then this is another reason why running backs and wide receivers look so good based on average draft position in the rounds 5, 6, 7. One, there are not a lot of quarterbacks going there, as Heath already mentioned. But 2, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller, they're going around 4 or 5 in ADP. Dallas Goedert and Kyle Pitts are in early round 6, maybe sneaking into round 5. So that's your top 7. Kelce in round 1, Mark Andrews in round 3, Hawkinson, Kittle, Waller in round 4 or 5, Goddard and Kyle Pitts in early round 6, maybe even late round 5. So the big question, Heath, if we say great or late, which we've talked about a lot, why should I even bother taking a tight end in round 5 or 6?
I don't. I think that's an excellent question. I think a lot of times we don't. And I think if you had avoided round 5 or 6 tight ends over the last 10 years, you would mostly be happy with the decisions that you have made.
Same question to you, Jamie. Why should I even bother taking a tight end in round 5 or 6? Or I guess even 4 at this point, because that's where Kittle, Hawkinson, and Waller are going in a lot of leagues.
There's only really 3 guys that I look for in this range at this point. Goddard, I kind of wait to see if he falls into round 7. Same thing with Kittle. But man, if Kyle Pitts hits, you're going to be so upset that you passed on that type of player and what he could be. And, I think Waller's the best of this bunch. So he's somebody that I'll take. And then I settle for Hawkinson. And when I say that, it just means he falls to a good spot. So that's typically somewhere in the round 5, round 6 range because people see the little red tag next to him on our site. I think that's
Jamie,
why he's fallen.
When would you take Waller?
I would take Waller around 5. I wouldn't reach before round 5.
Okay. All right. Go on.
I'm saying like Waller around 5, Hawkinson around 5, Pitts around 6.
What about right? We're higher on Pitts and lower on Kittle than ADP. What about after that? All right, I missed on the top 7, Jamie. What do I do?
I typically look for the best value. So Freiermuth is my next ranked tight end. He's my 8th ranked tight end. So if I find him at a good enough spot, which is typically closer to round 10, then I'll pull the trigger there. Same thing with Njoku in a similar range. I typically avoid Evan Ingram, which is why I was so frustrated that I had to spend so much of my remaining salary cap budget on him. And then I look for Kincaid. And then if I get to these point with these tight ends, I'm starting to try and get 2. So I've said this a lot recently that if you don't love your tight end, but you love your quarterback, don't take 2 quarterbacks, take 2 tight ends. If you don't love your tight end, if you love your tight end, don't love your quarterback, take 2 of those. It's very difficult in a 5 or 6 man bench to carry 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends because you're just leaving yourself with little depth at more important spots. So when you also get to the end of the draft, you kind of see, okay, I'm a Jake Ferguson guy. So if I know he's sitting there, I'm okay with, let me get past week 1. And if he has a good game, I'll try and, overspend on him, or I'll just make a move prior to week 1. That type of tight end is usually available. Luke Musgrave is typically going to be available on waivers, so you don't have to necessarily reach for a second tight end knowing that you can get one of those 2 guys.
Heath, your thoughts on, actually, let's not gloss over Kelce and Andrews. When do you take them?
Kelce, I think you could take him as early as pick 5, depending on the format. I like him right around pick 6, 7, 8 range. Andrews is definitely a round 3 pick. He's moved up a couple spots in the last week because of other guys falling behind him. And I think you could take him as early as soon as that Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, maybe Calvin Ridley, if he's in that group for you. As soon as those guys are gone, I'm taking Mark Andrews. I would take him before any of the round 3 running backs.
Okay. So who do you guys like, Freiermuth, Ingram, or Njoku?
Oh, it's Freiermuth for me. And I will tell you like a funny story from that auction. I was so mad at Jamie because like 10 minutes before the Evan Ingram thing, I put a $1 bid on Muth, and I meant to bid 2, and Jamie immediately bid 2. And so then I had to spend 3 on Muth because I didn't want to miss out on him. And so I was so angry I had to spend $3 on Pat Fryermuth in a $100 budget auction, but I ended up feeling okay about it at the end.
Better than the Ingram value.
But I like it is, and maybe we'll be wrong, but I don't have Ingram particularly close to the other two. I strongly prefer both Fryermuth and Njoku to Ingram.
So you've come down on Njoku a little bit.
I might be maybe if I have, it hasn't been a conscious choice. It's been because other guys have gotten moved, but he's right behind Fryermuth, I think.
And you have those guys over Waller, because I think you had Njoku over Waller at one point.
I did. I had moved Waller up a little bit, up to tight end 8, just to not be too far. I mean, I'm never getting him there anyway. But I was moved a little bit by the Giants throwing it to him 400 times in training camp.
And on one drive in the preseason. All right. So Kincaid. Jamie, do you take Kincaid ahead of any of that group of Fryermuth, Njoku, Ingram?
I have not yet. He's right behind Ingram for me. So Ingram is tight end 10 and Kincaid is tight end 11. So I'm very tempted, but again, you gotta worry about the history of rookie tight ends. It's just we can get as excited as we want to about Kincaid and Laporta, and there's so much upside for both those guys. And even Musgrave, and hopefully at some point, Mayer as well for the Raiders. But I just think like there's got to be a little bit of risk, involved. So I feel like I'm gonna be. You asked us the other day, who do you feel like you're gonna be wrong on? And Ingram feels like a guy I might be wrong on, just because everything you hear out of Jacksonville was like this offense. The schedule's amazing. The offense looks like it's going to be fantastic. Like there was somebody who told me this offseason, don't be surprised if they average a touchdown better per game scoring wise. Okay. And that's not out of the realm of possibility, because he according to all reports, Trevor Lawrence, it's just natural right now. Like he was thinking too much at the beginning of the season. Like he's just step back, throw, it's there. Ball's on the money right there.
Okay. And then let's do best value. Heath, best value at tight end?
I didn't want to have the same answer as my sleeper, so I said Kyle Pitts at now pick 71, the end of round 6.
Hey, okay. Jamie?
Juwan Johnson for me. He's a top 12 tight end. I think this is going to be a big time player for the Saints.
One sleeper, one breakout, one bust. Heath.
Tyler Higbee at 139, and my favorite guy to draft, if you're drafting one of those rookies, put them with Higbee. He gets Seattle in week 1. Pat Fryermuth is the breakout, and I've got George Kittle as the bust.
And Jamie?
I will go Laporta as the sleeper, Kincaid as the breakout, and the bust is, I agree with Heath, George Kittle.
Tyler Higbee against Seattle. Wow. They were so bad against tight ends last year. So let's see what he did. Just curious.
Nothing. He didn't get to play him with Matthew Stafford, I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. 2 for 14 on 5 targets and 4 for 33 on 7 targets. That was in week 18. All right.
Wow. Did you see this?
No, what?
Stephen Holder of ESPN, who used to cover the Colts. The mystery team that had discussions about Jonathan Taylor was?
Vikings.
The Chiefs.
The Packers.
Wow.
Wow, I was right.
Huh.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, maybe it was a fantasy football discussion. You'll never know. We are out. We will talk to you later today, 4 p.m. Eastern for the Draftathon. We'll see you there. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. Have a good one.